Sam Altman said one person will be able to create $1 billion company.
Such that one person could ship the entire product. The nice thing about Gumroad is it's basically just me. It's a dictatorship, right? That's kind of why we can move super fast.
Sahil Lavingia has one full-time employee, and he's taken Gumroad to a $10 million ARR and a $100 million valuation from Slack to code.
It'll go and build this. And then you can actually see, based on your PRD, what did the designer think they were supposed to be designing? All of a sudden, this is now a feature in production without us having to really do anything.
That's crazy. Weeks of coordination. You guys just decide, we want to do this. Devin, address it.
We are leaving CSS behind to migrate every single one of our CSS files and delete them all.
You can go straight from Slack to Devin.
This is like the first step I tell everyone to do if they're moving to start to use AI more.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I think that's the new dream, though. Everybody wants what you have now. And how many dividends have you paid yourself in the last year? Really quickly, I think a crazy stat is that more than 50% of you listening are not subscribed. If you can subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify podcasts, my commitment to you is that we'll continue to make this content better and better. And now on to today's episode. Sahil, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I was telling you off screen that I have been fanboying about you for a while. I once saw you in person 4 years ago, but I was too shy to actually come up to you. So this is a dream come true to be recording with you. What are we going to do today?
We are going to be cooking. We're going to be making 3 things, walking through how we, use AI, I guess small, medium, and large. The first thing will just be kind of how we sort of use it to to solve like a really small issue that comes up in Slack, where we have Devin just kind of take care of the issue so that we don't have to get bothered by some small feature requests that normally an engineer, designer, PM would have to tackle. The second one is going to be like sort of how we walk through building a feature, scoping out the PRD for an existing product of ours called Flexile. And then finally, we'll sort of try to build something totally from scratch, 0 to 1, and see how that goes. We don't know what we'll build, I guess. So TBD on that.
Truly live, everybody. Awesome. So can you show us this first one? I was pretty mind blown when you even just told me about this. From Slack to code.
Yeah, sure. This is an example of how we would use something like Devin to solve a problem. So, we have Slack, like many companies who use Slack. We have an internal customer support tool that we've built called helper.ai. And we had a feature request from somebody basically adding this kind of assign yourself button when something is not assigned. So if you use something like GitHub, it just basically, instead of 2 clicks where you have to like first click on assign and then click your name, it's 1 click. So you save, your customers 1 click, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so this was reported by one of our customer support staff, and she explained exactly why. This is very great. This is like exactly like the perfect feature request, which is like what you want and why you want it. And so I just said, hey, Devin, solve this, address this. And Devin reads the Slack thread, sees the 2 images, and then sort of explains its planning and keeps you up to date. And then eventually opens a pull request. And here you can read the code as you should. You should probably test it, make sure it did what you want it to do. Obviously, if you have tests, you should make sure the tests are up to date, all that kind of stuff. So Devin, this is kind of goes through and creates this, and then I do it and review it. So this is a good example of something that like no one had to really spend too much time thinking about, but it was solved, it was deployed, and all the deployment and all that has long been automated. So all of a sudden, this is now a feature in production for people to use and benefit from without us having to really do anything. So yeah, that's one example.
That's crazy. So the original process at a larger company that most people are living through right now, they are going to get that request in Slack. The PM is going to take note of it. They're going to investigate it. They're going to see, how many people is this affecting? Is this a big enough request? Then they're going to prioritize it. Once they prioritize it, there's going to be a request for create a PRD about this. They'll create the PRD about it. Then engineering is going to create their engineering spec about it. Then finally, it'll get prioritized in a sprint and an engineer will actually work on it. Weeks of coordination. You guys just decide, we want to do this. Devin, address it.
Yeah, well, I have a big reason that companies like that they do that is because they need buy-in from so many people, right? So the nice thing about Gumroad is basically just me. It's a dictatorship, right? So that's kind of why we can move super fast. Is you don't have to kind of like put together all this sort of work that's really just to get like internal buy-in. It has nothing to do with actually shipping the change. The hard part is like aligning all the people to kind of get behind that specific decision. One other reason I really like AI is because I think it sort of is quite good. It's sort of like 99th percentile at many things. And so generally the decisions it makes are pretty good ones. And actually, like things like design and code, we just kind of defer to the AI, right? And so it should come up in that sort of PRD. Something that's important should show up in the spec conversation itself. And if it doesn't, that's not that important. And the AI can decide however to tackle the problem. As long as it meets the criteria in the spec, it's going to it's correct, quote unquote.
But could bigger companies adopt this for features that are a little bit less contentious, that don't need buy-in? Like, I feel like there's going to be a future world where some companies are taking more of how you guys are working, maybe creating a bar for certain features, and that way shipping much, much faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that a bigger company would probably do it. I don't have a lot of experience working at big companies, so I don't know, to be honest, like the mechanics of them. But basically, you would just do it on a team basis, right? So you would pick a specific project. Microservice architecture is quite popular in these big companies for this reason, right? Where you can people get frustrated that they have to move at the slowest pace of the large organization, and so they think that if they like factor off and they just have like a small API microservice, that they can now all of a sudden move much faster. They can make different technical decisions. They can make different architectural choices. It's true to some degree, but that introduces like a lot of other complexity that you then have to think about. And I think my bias is to tend towards like, what's the right approach such that one person could ship the entire product. Like, so a lot of the way that big companies move faster makes it impossible to get smaller. Like their process actually is probably quite fast, but requires like a number of people that you can't, like you need a PM, you need the designer, you need the engineer. Like the way they work, you can't, without refactoring the process, you're not going to be able to get, and that's largely why these roles even exist. People talk a lot about automation and unemployment and stuff like that. But most of that unemployment, like it will happen to these kinds of jobs. It'll be mostly these kind of like producer like jobs. But two, they're going to persist a lot longer than people think because the production process is quite rigid in most of these organizations. You're not going to see companies all of a sudden decide to get rid of like 3 steps in their process. It's very difficult once you have process to unwind it, unless you have some sort of like what happened recently with, was it EA, I think, which is when private they were acquired. So in the case of EA is a good example. Like they probably have built up like a ton of bureaucracy over like the last 30 years that in the next 5 years is going to get chopped. Right? Like the bureaucracy is going to get massively sliced. Better or worse, it's going to lead to a much higher volatility in what EA as a company is going to ship instead of just like FIFA 26, FIFA 27. Like they're not doing much, right? Like they're really beholden to this bureaucracy, which basically exists because FIFA was such a successful game that they basically haven't had to do anything innovative for 30 years. That will now sort of start to happen, and which I think that's like sort of I'm actually more interested in that. Like, how does AI, can you revitalize these existing businesses and brands, not necessarily new businesses and new brands? I have like zero interest, frankly, almost in like new things right now.
So we saw the dictatorship workflow, maybe not portable to other companies. I think the second workflow might be portable, especially to some of those microservices, those smaller teams who want to pilot it. Can you show us this workflow?
Yeah. Sure. So this is for Flexile. Flexile is open source, so anyone who visits this URL will be able to see. But we have a GitHub issue here, which is basically for this feature on Flexile. Flexile is a contractor payments tool, so you can invite people, you can pay them, and then they can accept the payment. They can type in their bank account, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a feature we have, which the admin of a company could issue a payment, right? So the contractor does some work, they want to get $400, you can give them $400. You can sort of specify what it's for. And in our case, we built equity into this. So in this case, you can sort of choose an equity range, and then the contractor can sort of say, I want 10% or 50% or what, but they have to kind of pick within this range. This is very complicated. It's reduced like a ton of complexity. And so we're basically going to simplify this and say, we're going to get rid of this. The money, like when you say, I want to send someone $400, you're done. They just get $400. If they want equity, that's going to be specified ahead of time. It'll just show up as a note here. For example, like they will receive 10% of this, $40 in equity and stock options. But this way, be able to delete probably a few hundred lines of code, and like it'll be much simpler because you don't have this like 2-3 step process. So anyways, all of that I just put in this, which is not super helpful, right? If you're an engineer and you're like, okay, great, Sahil wants me to do this. I can guess roughly what this is going to be, but I would love to know more. And so people have questions. We have a conversation about this. This engineer asks a question. I flew somebody else in. We kind of have this sort of discussion, debate, etc. And then, typically from here, what you would do is you would sort of create a PRD. So in the case of this, I pasted this into GPT-5 Pro, which you probably don't need something like Pro, but it kind of comes up with this. Now a human would kind of go through this and read, edit this down. To me, this is like way too long. And so often that's why I sort of think the PRD is dying. Like, I don't think you really need it anymore, because the PRD is sort of, you can think about it like this, like internal resource for a company. Like, you don't really give it to the customer. You're just kind of using it to get these sort of PMs and engineers and designers aligned. So if you can sort of get everyone closer together and have more overlap in the skills, you can like operate off a much leaner and tighter PRD. So this is the PRD in my case, right? Like, this truly is. And so as people have questions, I would sort of go up here and I would sort of like flesh this out, like, for example, always use the equity percent that was selected by the contractor. Note this in the modal, etc. So you kind of like, basically, like, what I love about this process is you learn where your PRD is lacking, and your PRD is only as dense as like what basically cannot be inferred, just naturally, right? So for example, I could sort of take this and go into V0 and say, for Flexile, build this feature. And imagine this PRD was much longer. Imagine it was like this long, you could like build this, it'll go and build this. And then you could actually see, based on your PRD, like what did the designer think they were supposed to be designing? What did the engineers? And if they're wrong, if you sort of think they took a different approach, then you go back and reread your PRD and you say, oh crap, I forgot to mention that, like, do not update, whatever, right? So it kind of allows you to have almost like this like fake conversation with like the engineer and the designer, such that when you actually give your PRD to the engineer and the designer, which may still exist in your company, they get a much better PRD, right? Like, they're getting a much tighter, much more accurate to what you want, what's in your head. Because that's sort of the problem, is there's something in your head that you're trying to express in English and you're failing, right? Basically, there's a lot of stuff that you wanted to have accomplished that you didn't necessarily state. For example, there's this whole bit that it was in my head, but I didn't sort of state it. So now I have to go back and state that. Yeah. So
And are there
that's
any
kind of
tricks
my
to getting
flow.
V0 to like respect your design system, or is it fine if it's just whatever it comes up with?
I personally don't care, because for me, V0 is like an internal tool just to get the UI UX right. And generally the code base sort of, that will be tackled in sort of the code base step. And if you have a well architected code base, then you won't have to worry about it. It'll happen perfectly every time. If you don't have a well architected code base, then you're going to have a lot more issues.
So
But
for
yeah,
people like
generally I
me who
kind of have
don't
this.
exactly know what that means, what is a well-architected code base? What are the elements that they need to establish to make it that way?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like the now most valuable skill in software engineering, which is to architect the code base such that making incremental changes to it is really easy and intuitive. But for example, there's for a web application, there's several parts of the code base. One will be the design, right? Like, typically the design used to be handled with CSS. So you have these massive CSS files. So for example, I can show you in Gumroad's case, which is also open source, so people can follow along if they want. But if you look up our CSS files, you'll see that we have tons of CSS files that define the style of the application, right? And they all live within this, right? So the calendar, the car, the carousel, the car, like, they're all these things. This is a terrible way of building stuff today, because what it means is all of this code, to make a single change on gumroad.com, this code will be included on every single page, right? So if your if your page has a progress bar on it and you change the width to size 7 instead of size 5, that'll change the progress bar across all of Gumroad, right? So now you have to test every single page in which a progress bar shows up, right? So then you have to search for this specific thing, progress bar, search for it in the code base, and then update each one of these places and test it to make sure, like, for example, here you're overriding the width of the progress, right? And the display. So you have to test, you can kind of notice in a lot of these places, the width is 0.75 EM. So maybe that should be the default, but there's no way the default is set to size 5. What is size 5? I don't know. It's coming from somewhere else in the code base that I have to go discover, right? So there are all these like misdirections where it's really hard to start to build out this thing. The new world of building things, we use Tailwind. If you go to Flexile, uses Tailwind. There is no CSS files. If you search for CSS, you only have a single CSS file in the entire thing, which basically just defines like the overall themes. And this way, the AI never has to think about what's the foreground color, what's the background color, What blue do we use? What red do we use? The entire design system literally basically is here. The visual design system is here. Like the font, the color, what else is there, right? Padding, there's not much else, right? And so sort of super, super easy to understand, like think about how much context is here, right? It's 181 lines of code and you can basically build stuff within Flexile. But if you wanted to understand the design system in Gumroad, all of a sudden you're not 100 lines of code, you're at like 100 files of which each one is going to have, lots of code. Like you go to one of these files, you have all of this code that you have to think about, right? And so, yeah, so sort of Tailwind, you can have this conversation with ChatGPT, like why is Tailwind better than global CSS for shipping features? By the way, nothing to do with AI, right? Like, and if you really want a much faster response, you can ask ChatGPT without Pro turned on. But anything that basically is good for humans is good for AI and vice versa. So Tailwind is good for shipping humans. It's just much more noticeable because the rate of speed increase with AI is much more, right? So if you make this change, and we basically, like, this is like the first step I tell everyone to do if they're moving to start to use AI more, like they need to delete their CSS.
Oh, wow.
You're not gonna be able to make these changes. So for example, like this addressed this, right? Like why was this so simple and easy? Let's see the code. The code was one file change, right? Because there are no CSS files, there's no CSS to change, right? So in the case, let's say we were using CSS. Well, you have to change this file, which is the component, the equivalent of HTML. Then you have to change the CSS file, right? There would be an equivalent CSS file, right? Well, that CSS file is referenced from every single TSX file. So now you have to effectively, it's like as if you edited 300 files, right? So in this case, only one file. You only have to, and all the CSS changes are right here. Class name, flex, item center, gap one. All of these changes are, you want to make a button, but with this color, and you want to underline it on hover, and you want the text to be small, all here, And then reading this as a human, I can see all the changes. There's only one file, right? It's like infinitely simpler to work on. So that's one thing about architecting the code base. And you can actually see with Gumroad, we are leaving CSS behind, and we have a task open to migrate every single one of our CSS files and delete them all. So all these files will be deleted soon. And to sort of calculate that for you, let's see if I can open up this, find the file. So yeah, so like in this, I could just ask you, how many lines of code for all CSS files? Let's see what it does. Thousands of lines of code, right, will be deleted. So a huge amount, like a book's worth of content will be deleted. So all this, and the number of bugs that can exist will, like everything will improve. Some of this code may not even be used, and we don't even know. It's hard to say because it's it's all hidden in all these different files. 5,425 lines of code.
Crazy. Today's episode is brought to you by Vanta. As a founder, you're moving fast toward product market fit, your next round, or your first big enterprise deal. But with AI accelerating how quickly startups build and ship, security expectations are higher earlier than ever. Getting security and compliance right can unlock growth, or stall it if you wait too long. With deep integrations and automated workflows built for fast-moving teams, Vanta gets you audit-ready fast and keeps you secure with continuous monitoring as your models, infra, and customers evolve. Fast-growing startups like LangChain, Writer, and Cursor trusted Vanta to build a scalable foundation from the start. So go to vanta.com/Aakash, that's VANTA.com/AAKASH, to save $1,000 and join over 10,000 ambitious companies already scaling with Vanta. AI is writing code faster than ever, but can your testing keep up? TestCube is the Kubernetes native platform that scales testing at the pace of AI accelerated development. One dashboard, all your tools, full oversight. Run functional and load tests in minutes, not hours, across any framework, any environment. No vendor lock-in, no bottlenecks, just confidence that your AI-driven releases are tested, reliable, and ready to ship. TestCube, scale testing for the AI era. See more at testcube.io/Aakash. That's testcube.io/AAKASH. And so the powerful thing here is you define your design system using Tailwind, and then V0 can just pick up those components, and V0 will, once it gets put into your code base, it'll have your design system in place.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just an industry standard, right? So just think of the difference of like you hire an engineer and they're used to 2x4s, right? They understand the system, like the AI knows how this stuff, there's so much training data out there about Tailwind, et cetera. So it's just like really easy to get started and make progress.
Amazing workflow. So that's the second workflow. Now let's look at the large workflow. How does it look like end to end if we're building from scratch?
Yeah. What do you want to build?
It's a great question. Let's build something. Let's say we were building a competitor to a Kit or something like that, like an email provider for creators. How would we get started with that?
Yeah. So normally I would frankly start in Apple Notes. That's like my default, something like Google Docs, right? And you just decide what you want to build. So you want to build a Kit competitor. So this is like an email newsletter kind of.
Exactly. Really focused on like
newsletter.
creators as the audience and really helping them like be easy to send stuff that delivers.
So this is our PRD, right? Basically. I use V0. People have their own preferences. So, use whatever you want.
So you go straight into V0, getting the front end started, not really a step needed in between like the 4 lines and V0, like creating a PRD or something like that.
Yeah, in my opinion. A lot of people, they invest in the PRD because they're going to give it to a human, right? And they want to make sure that they don't waste that human's time.
Yeah.
If you're just giving it to an AI, like, why not? And by the way, like ChatGPT now supports this, right? I think so. Like, I think if you turn on Canvas, I think that's how you do it. Oh no, Canvas is this. I think maybe if you just say build this, or so now it created a PRD. I don't want a PRD, just a prototype.
Now let's see what ChatGPT 5 does here. I haven't tested
Yeah,
it.
I've heard generally pretty good things about it. So
Hopefully it's powered by Codex, which is people are loving.
I guess preview. So yeah, so you can iterate on it, right? You can say, okay, I don't really like, it's like send test or whatever. But it forces you to reckon with like, what's unique about your idea, right? Like, what are you building? You're forced to sort of like not just say, oh, it's an email newsletter thing, but like, okay, great. Like how does it look like? What is the name? What is like the core functionality that's just, different about your system than somebody else's system? Things like that. So that's sort of ChatGPT, say like, make it look like Stripe built it, something like that. See what it does there. And it's often what I do. I have like several open, because it takes some time.
Yeah.
I'll often have like 3 or 4 different windows open and just kind of like run through them and just kind of like juggle different ideas. And like, it's almost like having an army of assistants I'm kind of like riffing with, trying to come up with like an interesting idea.
Yep.
And I just kind of hop around.
Yeah, just think about this more, like some ways we can differentiate, right? It basically makes it really easy to like create good landing pages, make it look really good, but they start with like a paid plan. So I think we're going to like want to start with like a free plan or something like that. It's going to be the big thing. And I guess like Kit is like really, really good at driving like like allowing you to spin up lead magnets or different introductions to your newsletter send versus like a Substack is like there are no lead magnets or anything. So I think that'll be the direction we take it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of slow. This is the biggest problem. Things just can take some time.
Yeah. And you mentioned you've tested out a couple different tools. What other tools have you tested out for this? Why do you end up landing mainly on V0?
Yeah, I just like the design sensibility. We use Shad Cn a lot, so it's just kind of like pretty consistent with like just like I have this sort of like millennial design aesthetic, Helvetica, Apple, black and white sort of. I think it aligns with what I generally like, and so that's kind of why I tend to use it. But you could use like Lovable, people like Bolt, people like you can also use Cursor directly, or Codex.
I haven't used Codex yet. I use Clone Code.
You could say, build me kit.com, competitor, creator, focus. You notice I'm not like copy pasting the PRD. Like I like starting from scratch a lot because it helps me refine my own thinking as I go. And you mentioned lead magnets, which I think is interesting because I think that's like gives it like a more of a voice. Often like tools are really important. So like you're only as good as the tools you have access to. So what tools are you going to use to build this, right? What technology stack? This is a lot of where the software engineering background comes in. Generally, if software engineers will know more about the tools that exist to build websites than like a non-software engineer, right? So I might say like use Next.js, and even that alone will massively change like the direction of the thing. So this is V0.
And V0 seems to have done way more work than ChatGPT did. They actually created a nice landing page. I'm curious what other pages.
Yeah, ChatGPT can be quite bad. I mean, that's why I like V0 because it's sort of built specifically for this purpose. Don't super minimal. I would take another shot. I don't know where the chat go here. No. There's some other tab with chat somewhere on. But yeah, that's kind of the process. And so let's see what Codex is doing. So it creates using Next.js is creating the React app first. First thing it has to do is actually just set up the app. locally.
This is actually my first time like live using Codex, so I'm really excited to see the results.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. It's super popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Devin
Picking
a
up.
lot because it's something I can use from Slack, from my phone. I use Cursor still. At the end of the day, like a lot of things, like you want an IDE for certain kinds of things. I tried Cloud Code, but I didn't really stick with it. So I kind of sort of went straight to Codex.
So if we look at what V0 is up to in the background as well, are they
Yeah, it's rebuilding this based on my new prompt. Cool. I just asked it to be super minimal. I tend to think sometimes AI does too much stuff. So, it shows you, you can create like a little thing like this and embed it on your website. It really focuses on your subscribe form. So you can, create your subscribe form, you can embed it.
So if we were to say, we love this, we think this is differentiated, we like this front end, how do we go from like front end in V0 to production ready app?
Yeah, I mean, if you would want to sort of deploy this to Vercel, it would probably be the easiest thing to do. So, I would just find that button, wherever that button is, and deploy it. In this case, I guess create a new project, say like, Sendly, I guess it's called for now. Yeah, so it's compiling it. It's using Bun. Interesting. That's cool. Bun, I guess Zero uses Bun. Did you know that V0 uses Bun? I wonder if this is how they sped up. They've been reporting these like speed gains in Next.js. I wonder if that's how they did it. They just switched to Bun. This is new to me. So yeah, deployed it, I think. And now you can visit this URL. So this is production, anyone can visit this and you'll see this, this page. So you could sync this with Git. So then you can open it up in Cursor and continue working on it in like an IDE context, right? You don't have to, which generally is what you want to do at some point. This is not the right interface to build software in. It's nice to prototype. It's nice to like chat, but most engineers are not going to want to build without being able to see the code. And Cursor, having it locally on your computer is pretty nice, right? But you can see this is how they work, right? Like how I showed you, like they have a single CSS file with these themes.
Yeah.
So, if I wanted to make it look like Flexile, right, I could literally just copy paste our theme here
Nice.
and boom, it'll look like Flexile, right? And I can even, if you want, so we can try it out, see if that works, just to kind of show people we're not full of it. And there's chance for mistakes too. But like, let's say I'm just gonna copy this entire file and say, hey, can you follow the Flexile theme with this global CSS file, right? And then it will do it.
It'll figure out what parts of that file were like Flexile specific, change those out for the right variables for this project.
Yeah, so you can see here, like, you can see a custom color palette, signature font.
And so you take it into Cursor, and do you use Devin in Cursor?
No, I use Devin through Slack or through their website.
Okay, nice.
So normally I use Devin for like small stuff and Cursor for big stuff. That's kind of like the simple binary.
Yep.
But yeah, you get, it talks about, border radius, for example, our theme, indicates stuff about how round things should be and all the different colors. Oh yeah, here the radius, the color of our links should be blue. The design system is actually like pretty small. There's actually not that many things that define a brand, right? If you think about it, the colors, the font, the padding, the shadows, the borders, it's pretty cool. So this, it'll take some time, but it'll run through it. And then, pretty interesting. Let it continue doing this thing.
Very powerful.
Yeah, so you can see it. It didn't do much because we probably already have like a similar theme, but it cleaned up these things. If you want, you could, there's another thing people, you can do. You could literally just take a screenshot of like, flexile.com. Say, let's say it's like not blue enough. Make it look like this as a parent company, right? You want similar branding, right? Again, like state why you want something. AIs could have reasons. So if you state why you want something, it'll actually like help and think through the right approach.
Presumably V0 is probably using some Claude models since those are the best Claude models, but they probably have some mixture of models for different tasks, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. They have some generally framework for, it's not that much more than a simple model, but there's a little bit more of like, planning step, executing step, wireframing. Like they have a few of those. And some models, they can use a cheap, fast model. Other things they want like a slow, smart one. So yeah, I mean, I feel like these models are effectively as intelligent as I need them to be. Not that much more is necessary for me to feel like they sort of have replaced most kinds of software engineering. The biggest thing is, as you see, the speed, right? Like humans are faster. So
yeah,
if this could be instant, like if this is like really, I feel like that's the core problem is I actually, it's just slow. So things just take a lot of time. It's like, Okay, so now everything is blue. It did a pretty good job. Like it looks much more like Fluxile now. Still not perfect. I would still mess around with, for a while. For example, like this thing, it would be cool if this like counted down. But again, I'm always doing like 5 different things at once, right? I'm answering email, I'm answering Slack, I'm PMing something, I'm doing something on Twitter. I'm like, that way, like all this dead time, I'm not waiting, right? I'm going out and doing something else and coming back like, 5 minutes later. And the
Yeah, I
demand for
found
these
that.
AI services is so great that it's kind of like LA traffic. There's just a lot of demand to use these tools because they're very useful.
Yeah, I found that time blocking on my calendar doesn't work nearly as well as it used to because I need to be doing like 4 things at once with these AI tools.
So here's a good example of a failed PRD. It's doing what I asked it to do. It added a countdown. I think that's kind of cool. But really, I meant for it to be animated and specifically with a specific React library called Numberflow.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to ask it to. So that was in my head, animated using Numberflow, but I didn't say it.
Yeah, in the old world,
And
for PRD, you have to
a
like,
really good front end engineer would know that I meant this. So
yeah, if
AI
they'd
is not
worked
as
with you.
good as like a really talented, front end person who would understand that like when I say countdown, I mean like a metaphorical countdown, like something that's I'm not adding it just for the function. I'm adding it to get the customer excited that we are good at software engineering and good software engineers can do animation. That's sort of what all the stuff I didn't say.
Yeah,
And it looks like it failed because there's some error. So we'll ask,
it to fix
generally you
itself.
just have to click this fix button. Another part of being a software engineer. Okay, like it looks like this works. So let's run this version. And I'll say run locally and see. Let's see what. So yeah, it created a Next.js app, but I'll run it locally and see. Yeah, there's some. Yeah, it's doing some animation, but it's kind of weird.
Oh yeah, it's not as good as the example.
It's not as good as the example. It's not as good as the example. Why not? All you got to do is copy and paste the example. Come on. The reason is it did not actually use that library. It did it manually. So
Today's episode is brought to you by the experimentation platform Chameleon. 9 out of 10 companies that see themselves as industry leaders and expect to grow this year say experimentation is critical to their business. But most companies still fail at it. Why? Because most experiments require too much developer involvement. Chameleon handles experimentation differently. It enables product and growth teams to create and test prototypes in minutes with prompt-based experimentation. You describe what you want, Chameleon builds a variation of your web page, lets you target a cohort of users, choose KPIs, and runs the experiment for you. Prompt-based experimentation makes what used to take days of developer time turn into minutes. Try prompt-based experimentation on your own web apps. Visit chameleon.com/prompt to join the waitlist. That's KAMELEOON.com/prompt. Today's episode is brought to you by the AI PM certification on Maven. Run by Mikdad Jaffer, who is a product leader at OpenAI, this is not your typical course. It's 8 weeks of live, cohort-based learning with the leader at one of the top companies in tech. As you know by now, the future of PM is AI, and this certificate will give you the learnings, plus the hardware, to show you are ready for an AI PM role. I myself took the course and recommend it. Put on by the amazing team at product faculty, including Mo Ali and Pavel Hearn, it's worth it. Former students come from companies like OpenAI, Shopify, Stripe, Google, and Meta. The best part, your company can probably cover the cost. So, if you want to get $550 off, use my code Aakash550C7. That's AAKASH 550C7 and head to maven.com/product-faculty. That's maven.com/PRODUCT-FACULTY.
well, we're gonna try one more time, and we're gonna literally say like this. That's the code. The code needs this import number flow. So now it should get it. So you can see that, like, that's what PMing is, right? It's just like being incredibly explicit with what you want.
Yeah.
And if you are incredibly explicit with what you want, then the sort of software engineering intern, et cetera, like will do what you want it to do. Yes, this is Flexile's growth. Pretty cool. Things are working. The way we work is starting to work. We grew 50% month over month for some reason. I don't know. I don't really know what we're doing that's working, but that's cool. It tried. So let me just quit Codex. Say npm ls. Where did it create? Oh yeah, create a newsletter. npm wrote that, and it created it. So let's open it up and see what it did. So this is why I don't like Codex, right? It's like a lot of trust. You don't know until you open it up. So this is what it did. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
I think it did the most work.
It did a lot of work. Yeah. And that's what people say. It's sort of very industrious. Like it does a lot more than you would expect. Like it iterates on itself quite a lot. So this is pretty cool, I would say. Like it's all in one page, step 1, step 2, step 3. I don't really like the UX. It kind of has this like very like old school, like template vibe,
Yeah.
but it's sort of pretty functional. I assume this will update automatically.
And if
Yeah.
we
So
build in
all this stuff works.
Codex, presumably like for Codex, we could have linked it up to the code base at the beginning and the Tailwind CSS file that Flexel or whatever, if we had an existing product had, if we were doing that, we could
Totally.
have done that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the way you use Codex, so like is you just open it in any terminal, right? So if I'm working on Flexile here, right, I just run Codex, and then all of a sudden I'm using Codex, right? Whatever I want to do. So like for example, like I have that task of like remove the figure, I can just say generically. Actually, let me see it just for fun how and this is a good test is how good the spec is, right? Like you can just say like in theory, just do it, right? If it's AGI, they should do it. If it's not, then, there's something I didn't state I need to connote. So yeah, something like this would take days, now would take hours. So that's a pretty significant boost in productivity.
Love it. So I think that's it for the demos. I think we showed everybody a really comprehensive set of 3 workflows. You can go straight from Slack to Devin if you're in a dictatorship. You can talk about it more if you're a more mobile team or a bigger team in GitHub on an issue. You don't even need to create a full PRD, or you can iterate on your PRD with AI and a prototyping tool, then connect it into your design system with something like Tailwind and make it much better, much faster to reveal what are all those things inside your head that you actually wanted to create. Amazing. That's the demo section. This is how Sahil is running his company. Now you guys got an inside look. This is how you power an AI company with AI tools. I want to talk a little bit about Gumroad because it's got to be one of the most fascinating companies out there. Tell us a little bit about how you guys are structured. You have only 1 employee, but you have contractors. How do those contractors get work? You pay them. What is the structure for getting work done at Gumroad?
Yeah, we've been through a lot. We started out as like a sort of traditional venture-backed startup in 2011 up until 2015 when we failed to raise our Series B. That's when I sort of did our first sort of major pivot the product stayed the same, but a sort of operational pivot. So we downsized. We went to about three or so people, got to profitable, and sort of ran the business myself for a while, did customer support, product support, fraud risk, customer support, fixing bugs. Not that many new feature shipments, but basically just try to kind of keep the site up and respond to customers and stuff. Then we started growing a little bit. COVID happened. That was a big boon. Crowdfunding round. So all of a sudden we had some more cash. We started growing the team again, but this time sort of differently, primarily contractors, hourly, part-time, remote, and we have a core team now that's like full-time. So me and Urshad, and we have maybe 3 or 4 people who work like 30 hours a week or so. And then we have the bounties that we do with the open source community now. So all of our code is open source, which means we don't actually need that many engineers on the team because you don't have to be on the team to work on the code. Right. So in theory, you need a lot less people. And that's kind of how we work now. So it's sort of a, small team, and it's hard. We have an office that could fit 11 people, but it's just tough to, our bar is really high and AI is so cool. And there's so much opportunity for everybody out there. That's hard to find the right people.
So you aimed, it sound like at one point, to build $1 billion VC-backed company. What is your current goal for Gumroad?
I mean, very practically, very boring, but we're trying to get to 10 million in EBITDA. It's just nice to have a goal, nice to have a short-term goal for the year where the team and everyone can align on like what we're trying to do and the changes we're trying to make and the sort of order of magnitude changes we need to make to make that goal happen, which I think we'll get to. It'll be tight, but that's a good goal. I think pushes you at the very end to work a little bit harder. Beyond that, I haven't thought about it too much. Like open sourcing everything was a goal, but to be honest, like we don't have a lot of goals because like if we want to do something, we just do it. Like there's not like a long lead time to doing stuff. So we just started doing more frequent on-sites. So try to sort of 1 week a month where we get together in person and build stuff together. Well, I think a lot of my focus over the next couple of years will be on like now I have a kid, I have a 5-month-old. So balancing the two and structuring the company and the culture such that I can be really productive and still do stuff with the team. But then also like not have it be as intense and as all consuming as it can be sometimes. And so that's kind of like the sort of balance that I'm trying to strike. But yeah, nothing too crazy, to be honest. I feel like for the first time in a long time, which is the nice thing about having a profitable business doing dividends is I'm not like looking at the future and I get dividends every year. So I'm trying to like operate the business, slightly better, like like almost like as a perfectionist, like can we just perfect the current business instead of like do other stuff all the time. So we'll see. Flexstyle is fun to work on. It's growing, chip away at that, fix bugs, improve the product. I just want to like work on software, make the software better, have people use it, and just like be proud of the work we do, have some cool people to do it with. So I have some structure in my life, stuff like that.
Honestly, I think that's the new dream though. Everybody wants what you have now, like a business working towards 10 million in EBITDA. Where are you guys at so far in the progress towards that?
Yeah, I think we're at like seven or
Wow.
8 million. So, still work to do. Like it's not going to be a walk in the park, but
That's pretty
yeah,
amazing
I think
for
we'll get
two
there by
people.
the sometime next year.
And how many dividends have you paid yourself in the last year?
Last year I got about $2 million.
That's really the life, right? Living, building a profitable software business, having a 5-month-old, controlling your schedule, paying yourself $2 million. I think a lot of people want to aspire to that. When you talk to people, outside of when they're not in the VC backed realm and they're just hiring like crazy, but they are trying to stay bootstrap, profitable, they are growing, they're trying to take on AI tools. What are the things getting in their way? Where I see you very freely just using AI tools. What are the unlocks those founders need to hear?
Yeah, I mean, maybe their businesses are just doing super well, and so they don't need to reinvent themselves. I think that's a big part of it. Like I think people underestimate like if you're doing fine, like there's no reason to like investigate the future. So yeah, so I would say that's the biggest one. Just like P0, right? Like there's only so many priorities you can actually have. So if it's not your number one priority in the business, like you have one more priority. Like let's say it's hiring someone, you're gonna be spending all your time on that. So that's kind of just like the way it goes.
So you have some other things you're working on, like anti-work. You talked about flex style. I think you guys acquired like small bets. How does it all fit together, the picture for you?
Yeah. How did it fit together? I don't know. Honestly, I just kind of did like a retrospective on like COVID and everything else like that, and just felt like why not make a bet? And what was like the best fit? It wasn't like, is this the right fit? It's just like, well, let's just make a bet on the best fit. So that's what we did. And now we're in, nice to have a community, nice to have a place that's kind of like our default like community of small time creators. And so that's kind of like why we did it. And, I was thinking a lot on like, okay, we built this like big, like last month, like 35,000 people sold at least one product on Gumroad. So there's like a huge number of people, but Gumroad is kind of plateaued and we sort of have what we want. We're incrementally making it better, but I don't think that's like more features isn't really what creators want. Like community advice, stuff like that, I think would be better. And so that's kind of like where we kind of decided to say, oh, maybe there's this like community and we can upsell. And so there's like the base Gumroad SaaS, and then there's like the community that can like, actually help you like with legal, finance, business, marketing, sales, tax, advice, hiring. That's where I think creators sort of tend to need help getting to the next level, going from like one person to a team, for example. Like even me, I technically only have one employee or whatever, but like that's who cares, right? Like what matters is like, are you, doing the things you want to do? Are you, do you have the reason we don't have $1 billion single person company is not that we can't. It's just that we don't want to. like Google has 3,000 billion-dollar companies in Google alone. There's like probably, I can't imagine how many PMs run $1 billion company by themselves, so it's probably pretty common. Within Fang, there's probably thousands of examples. It's just outside of Fang, if you're doing it all yourself, like then like I have to do the bookkeeping, I have to do like it's just not what most people want to do. So it tends to be more of like a marketing gimmick, like, oh, one person, So yeah, that's kind of how I mean, maybe that's different. Like we have true AGI where you really don't need any accounting, like all sort of tasks you can sort of have a robot do. But in my mind, if that's possible, then like the robot will automate you too. You'll kind of have a zero employee business. You won't have like a one person business, right? You'll just go straight to zero. You'll still own the business, but there will be no people working on it. It'll be kind of like a smart contract or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I discovered too, scaling my business. After a while, it's like, what was the point of being a solopreneur? Like, just so I could put the label solopreneur. I think I'm going to switch over to entrepreneur and hire somebody to help me with taxes, with sales, with all these different activities that you don't want to do. You don't have to stick to a solo business.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big part of it. Like, I think there's just so much. There's sort of like the pro VC like pro VC cult, and that sort of a lot of the indie hacking is kind of like a response to that. But I think it also is a cult in a way, right? Where it's just like there's nothing wrong with having a team. There's nothing wrong with like working in person. There's nothing wrong with like being acquired. There's nothing wrong with having a job. Like there's like we're all basically trying to manage our time and money equation, and like the way that ends up looking for people is going to be different, and it is very dependent on like your personal background, right? Like for example, I don't invest in public stocks. Most people would say that you're insane. Like that's like crazy. Like I just get 2 million in dividends. I just hold it in cash, 100% in cash. But the reason I do that is because I have access to deals that no one has access to. Like the public does not have access to startups, right? So it's sort of like a lot of these, these things are sort of dependent on that. Like why would I invest in Figma as a public company if I could invest in Figma as a private company? So all this stuff matters when you're making decisions for yourself. That's just kind of part of things. So yeah, I think you don't want to be extreme. Like one person, company is not necessarily the goal. It's sort of a vanity metric, right? It's kind of cool, fun. It definitely gets eyeballs. So like if there's ever like a time cover of me, it'll be something along those lines, just because that's kind of like what people read and click. I think having a team is great. Like the one of the nicest things about having profitable business, you can hire people, right? You can be like, oh, I really want to work with this person. Boom, I now can talk to this person for an hour every month because I hired them to do this task, and I get to talk to them about this specific thing. And it's like kind of almost like a hiring a therapist or something, to some degree.
Yeah, as soon as you build that one person company that is making like 500K or a million, I think everybody will cross that point. They'll realize it as well. Being a solo business is kind of overrated, but I don't think what's overrated is embracing AI in every part of your business and being at the front edge of how to use AI in your business. Like someone I was talking to, he has a huge consultancy. So what he's done is he's created a bunch of AI agents that take the notes, that take the advice he's given his prior mentees, and then simulates for him a draft of what he would want to say after a meeting. So there's all these different workflows, whether you're in a consulting business or a product business like we just demoed all day today, where I think being on the edge of AI is still really useful.
Totally. I mean, at the end of the day, it is like the technology of our time. So like I would have learned to drive in 1920s. Now you have to learn to use AI, right? So if you want to be in tech, that's like what being in tech is, definitionally.
So you have a legendary Twitter account. That's what made me a fanboy back in 2021, as we were talking about. A lot of people, I think, have over 360,000 followers at this point on Twitter. So it sounds like that's helped you in a couple different ways, right? It's helped you with your deal flow, it sounds like, for your angel investing, which is the major thing you're doing with those dividends. It's obviously helped you grow Gumroad, and you probably get some creator monetization. Are those the three main areas of benefit, or how else do you think about that?
I think it's really good feedback. So I think most people don't have access to the number of people to give you feedback. So like imagine you have an idea, your idea is going to be somewhat reasonable, but like if you have 100 people give you feedback on the idea, whether it's a book or a chapter or a web application or a product idea or a startup or a business or philosophy or politics or whatever, I just think my ideas are better because I just get so much more feedback about them. So I think that it's sort of like market feedback in some kind of way. You just have a lot more of that. And so that's a really, really helpful thing. I think it's really helpful if I move to a new city. I sort of have like a built-in social network, which is really nice. But generally, a lot of really cool, smart, hardworking, successful people. I can sort of like pre-filter them just based on what they say on the internet, like whether I would like to hang out with them or not. So that's cool. But to be honest, that's about it. Like I actually think it's like never been less useful. It's actually really, and that's because the algorithms are really good these days, right? Like you can sort of think about it like the better the algorithms get, the like more useless your audience is, because in theory, a really good algorithm means that like a new person with a really good piece of content, but no audience will get significant reach, which can happen. So I think now more than ever, like the sort of incumbent advantage is very low for content. For other things, it's still high, but like for like being like, for example, if you're a new musician today, it's like the best time ever to be a new musician. It's never been a better time. Filmmaker, are you kidding me? Like a new filmmaker today. The only problem is you have so much competition because so many people also have access to the same tools. So just like the number of people, but most people, frankly, don't actually compete that seriously. So you're not really like the pool of people like doesn't grow as proportionally to the how much easier it is, right? So even if it's 1,000 times easier to build web applications today than like 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever, you don't see that number of people doing it, right? Like roughly a similar number of engineers today than 10 years ago, even though it's much easier to deploy something to the internet today, like a lot easier. And that's because people just have personal preferences, what they want to do, what they want to work on, how they want to spend their time. So I think a lot about that too. Like how does AI like change things, but also how does AI not change things, right? Like if AI makes it incredibly easy to code, you're not going to see more software engineers. You're actually probably going to see a decline in software engineers because the people who wanted to become software engineers already did. So like actually the hardness may be something that attracted them to it, that like if it's no longer hard, they may not be attracted to it anymore. So yeah, fun stuff to think about.
I was going to ask after that, and since we're at time, this is pretty much our last question here. Would you recommend people who are trying to create, a really lean AI first team to be investing in building a personal brand and building in public?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to get to know your customers, right? If your customers are there and that's a way to reach them, fine. If you're doing venture, fine, because your customer is the VC to some degree, so that's important. But I would say most people doing it, like they're doing it because they want to. They're not doing it because there's like a business reason to do it, right? Like I'm not tweeting because there's a business reason. I didn't like come up with my, like some sort of strategy, right? Like I was just having fun. I was like a young kid in high school and I wanted to talk to other people building stuff. And the only way to do that was Twitter at that time. And I was literally in Singapore. There's like no way to hang out with these people in Singapore. So, I created a Twitter account and there's like 100 people from Singapore on Twitter or something. And maybe it's not Twitter today. Maybe it's something else. I think the most important thing is you want to build a reputation of someone who is helpful and smart, right? Like this person helped me in this way, right? That's generally, hopefully why I have followers. I don't have followers because I said something witty. Hopefully I assume like people are like, oh, Sahil like wrote this essay and it helped me clarify my thinking in this way. And I'm going to follow him. Maybe he has some other interesting stuff, right? Like, so I think it's sort of like, that's kind of how I think about follower accounts generally. It's just like this person helped me. And so I that's kind of how I think about it. It can be in-person help. It can be offline help. It can be parental help, friends. The goal should be just like to help people. And like, if you help people, then you will have an audience. Like you may not have a follower count, right? Like you may not even have, but like more people will show up to your birthday, right? Like more people will show up to your book launch. Like I think people, there's a big difference in like people, not followers and like genuine, like fanatics, like if I walk down the street at Times Square, no one's going to notice, even though I may have a lot of followers. And then someone with very few followers, but is famous, people will notice, right? Like George Clooney, I don't know if he has a Twitter account, but like he would probably be recognized on the street. And so I think, sort of there's like fame. And I think people sort of proxy like followers on Twitter with fame or something like that, but there's zero correlation, right? It's kind of the like weird, it's just, I think of it like you're kind of like on the other side of the Vegas Strip. You're like on the productions line you're not supposed to see, but there's like all the creators are hanging out and, all the, business owners and all the like grabbing a drink at the bar, all the cab drivers, like that's kind of like Twitter. It's like how many of those people know who you are, right? Like how many, it's sort of this like the meta world. It's sort of like it's sort of the deep state almost. Like it's just the people on Twitter are the deep state basically.
Or maybe they're all just really shy like me. And when they do see you in person, they just don't go home and tell you.
Yeah, that could be true to some degree. I do notice like if I wear a Gumroad shirt, I get recognized a lot more. But my guess is I get recognized somewhat similarly, but people feel comfortable because I'm wearing the Gumroad shirt that it's kind of like, it's okay to say you know me because I'm the one saying I'm okay with this sort of, this identification. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's funny.
We could talk for hours. Thank you so much for your time today, Sahil.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate
Hopefully it's helpful to people.
All righty. See y'all later. Bye. So if you want to learn more about how to shift to this way of working, check out our full conversation on Apple or Spotify podcasts. And if you want the actual documents that we showed, the tools and frameworks and public links, be sure to check out my newsletter post with all of the details. Finally, thank you so much for watching. It would really mean a lot if you could make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, following on Apple or Spotify podcasts, and leave us a review on those platforms. That really helps grow the podcast and support our work so that we can do bigger and better productions. I'll see you in the next one.